Remember, kids, conspiracy theories are never true, except on TV and in the movies where they're always true. This is a review of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Conspiracy. If you have not seen this episode, and you don't want to know how that old man who's beaten the hell out of Riker and Geordi and Worf got so strong, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. Hey, it's that Star Trek story where gross little space bugs crawl inside people and control their brains. No, not that one. The other one. The Enterprise is on its way to the beautiful planet Pacifica, which, to hear Riker tell it, is all warm water and beautiful beaches. They're ahead of schedule, and the vibe on the bridge is loose and relaxed. Geordi tells Data a joke. Data doesn't get jokes, but he analyzes it, determines it to be very amusing, and responds by giving us all a dead-on J.D. Vance impression. The light mood doesn't last. An urgent subspace message comes in, Code 47, which means it's super important and for the captain's eyes only. Riker wakes up Picard, because apparently this is the night shift. Picard takes the call still in his pajamas, which is what you get when you call late at night. And if you ask me, Picard is being extra accommodating here. I don't even answer the phone after my bedtime. So what if somebody died? Why do I need to hear about it after 9 p.m.? Are they still going to be dead tomorrow morning? If not, you've got a whole different problem, which I also do not want to be involved with. Anyway, it's Picard's old friend and fellow Starship Captain Walker Keel calling. He tells Picard he has something very important to discuss with him of a highly sensitive nature, hence contacting him on the super important frequency, but they can't talk about it on the video phone. Keel asks Picard to meet him on planet Ditalix B. Picard is dubious, but because of his trust in and long friendship with Captain Keel, he agrees. Keel warns Picard not to trust anyone, and hangs up. Picard gets dressed, heads to the bridge, and orders Geordi to alter course to Ditalix B immediately. Riker says, "What about Pacifica? Should I tell them we're going to be late?" And Picard says, "You don't tell Pacifica a damn thing. Those waterlogged, dope-smoking beach bums can swim and spin for all I care." The Enterprise arrives at Ditalix B. 3 other ships are already there, and there are 3 life signs detected on the otherwise uninhabited surface of the planet. Picard beams down alone and meets those 3 life signs, Captain Rix, Captain Tryla Scott, and Picard's old buddy, Captain Keel. Picard's like, "Hey gang, what's up?" Keel says, "Where did we first meet?" And Picard says, "At that key party at your mom's house." Keel says, "Do you remember the night you introduced Jack Crusher to Beverly?" And Picard says, "It was you who introduced Jack to Beverly. I remember it clearly because it was the same night I finally broke things off with your mom." Keel says, "And the name on your birth certificate is?" And Picard says, "Jean Luke Packard. I misspelled it on my application to Starfleet Academy, and I was too embarrassed to correct it, so I've just gone by Jean-Luc Picard ever since, as you well know. Now what the hell is the meaning of all this? And why is that blue guy pointing a gun at me?" Captain Keel and the others explain. Something very strange has been happening in Starfleet lately. Picard hasn't noticed because the Enterprise has been away exploring the frontier, but high-ranking officials have been giving unusual orders, moving personnel around for no apparent reason, evacuating entire starbases without explanation, and several prominent officers have died in mysterious accidents. Keel even suspects his own first officer is in on it, whatever it is. They aren't sure what exactly is going on, but Keel, Rix, and Scott are worried the Enterprise might be targeted next, so they warn Picard to keep in touch through covert channels and to watch his back. Picard returns to the Enterprise and confides in Counselor Troi about what Keel told him. Troy's like, "If you think there's something to be worried about here, shouldn't you tell the rest of the crew?" Picard's like, "The rest of the crew? Why would I tell them anything? They didn't get invited to Ditalix B for a secret meeting. I did. Let them cultivate their own sources instead of leeching off of my connections." Despite his concerns, Picard lacks hard evidence that what Keel and the others told him is an actual threat, so he orders a resumed course to Pacifica. In the meantime, though, he does tell Data to conduct a thorough review of all recent orders from Starfleet Command to see if he can find any troubling patterns. Then, the trip to Pacifica gets interrupted again when, along the way, Worf detects the debris of a recently destroyed ship. Worf soon confirms that the debris is from the Horatio, the ship commanded by Captain Keel, Picard's trusted old friend who warned him about the strange behavior of Starfleet Command, is dead. Which feels pretty ominous, but hey, could just be a coincidence. Ominous coincidences happen. Picard meets with Riker and fills him in on the possibility of a conspiracy. Riker is skeptical. They have no evidence the destruction of the Horatio was anything other than an accident. Data walks in, having completed his study of recent Starfleet Command activity, and he thinks he's found the evidence Picard's been waiting for. I have detected unusual activity during the past 6 months, Data explains. Command personnel have been reshuffled, newly assigned officers have had frequent contact with high-ranking Starfleet officials, plus Earth imposed tariffs on imports from Mars, then canceled the tariffs, then imposed the tariffs again. Whoever's running this show seems to have no idea what in the hell they're doing. But it sure seems like someone is attempting to covertly take control of the Federation. That sounds kinda serious, so Picard decides to just chuck the Pacifica mission altogether and take the Enterprise back to Earth. They arrive, and 3 admirals, Aaron, Savar, and Quinn, answer their hail. The admirals are like, hey, didn't expect you guys to be back so soon. What are you doing here? Because you don't need to be here, everything's fine and normal. Picard tells them he has business he'd rather discuss in person, and after a brief consultation with Lieutenant Commander Remick, who is also there, the admirals invite Picard and Riker to beam down for dinner. Only Admiral Quinn won't be able to make it, because he'd rather visit the Enterprise. What a nerd. Quinn prepares to beam up. It's to be a short visit, so he's packing light, just his purple Space Scorpion, and that's all. Quinn beams up to the Enterprise. Picard and Riker greet him, and as they're walking him to his quarters, Picard says to Quinn, hey, do you remember the last time we talked a few months ago, and you told me about a threat you discovered that could destroy the very fabric of the Federation? Whatever happened with that? And Quinn says, oh, never mind that. I was just talking about, immigrants. They're still who we blame all our problems on, right? Yeah. That's all that was. Fucking immigrants. Picard pulls Riker aside and says, so here's the deal. That's not the real Admiral Quinn. Riker's like, are you sure? And Picard says, yes, absolutely. The real Admiral Quinn loves immigrants. He's endlessly curious about other cultures and always eager to try new ethnic foods. Now listen, while he's here, have Dr. Crusher come up with some excuse to run a medical scan on him so we can figure out who or what he really is. Riker's like, he's an admiral. How are we supposed to do that? Picard says, I don't know, dude. Just do it. And then beam down and join me at Starfleet Command. I hate going to dinner parties alone. There's never anyone to talk to. While Picard heads down to the dinner with the other 2 admirals, Riker drops in on Quinn. Riker notices the case Quinn brought along and says, hey, what's in the case? And Quinn says, you know what? We've spent all this time secretly building up a conspiracy to take over Starfleet, but fuck it, why not? It's a superior form of life, and I brought it aboard to show to Dr. Crusher. Riker tries to leave, but Quinn grabs hold of him with way more strength than an old man like him should have, and throws Riker across the room. They have a quick fight with just the right amount of high kicks being exchanged, and Quinn finishes Riker by throwing him into a glass coffee table, but not before Riker manages to call security. Security, in the form of Worf and Geordi, comes rushing in, and Admiral Quinn says, yeah, Riker slipped and fell. I'm sure he'll be fine once Dr. Crusher gets here, though. Anyway, gotta go, bye. Geordi tries to stop Quinn from leaving, so Quinn says, fuck it again, I guess, and picks Geordi up and throws him through the doors and out into the corridor. Then he kicks Worf's ass for a minute before Beverly shows up and subdues Quinn with a few good solid blasts from her phaser. They take Quinn and Riker to sickbay, and while Riker remains unconscious over in the corner, Beverly discovers that one of those purple space scorpions is inside Quinn, attached to his spinal column, controlling his brain and breathing through a little blue tail that sticks out the back of his neck. The scorpion also gives its host body superhuman strength and durability, and can't be removed without killing the host. Picard slips away from the admirals before dinner is served and calls the Enterprise, and Crusher tells him about the parasitic mind-controlling space scorpions. Picard's like, yeah, I figured it was something like that. Keep trying to find out what you can, and when Riker wakes up from his nap, tell him to get his ass down here. It's bad enough having to make small talk with other humans. With evil space scorpions? No thank you. Crusher hangs up with Picard, and then all of a sudden Riker is awake and he's right behind her, and then they cut away abruptly, and holy shit, what just happened? Picard sits down to dinner with Admirals Savar and Aaron, and also some random dude in a gold uniform. Who invited you? The cafeteria is on the first floor. Anyway, Picard lifts the lid on his dinner and discovers that the special of the day is mealworms. Oh, hey, no, that's okay, but if you've got any snails back there, I'd love a big old plate of those. Picard gets up to leave, but is stopped at the door by Riker, who is suddenly Mr. Bossy Boots, and tells Picard, sit down, you'll be one of us soon. Admiral Aaron says to Riker, you were supposed to take control of the Doctor. Riker says, yeah, well, Riker walked in unexpectedly, so we had to improvise. Aaron checks the back of Riker's neck and finds the little blue tail sticking out. No possible way to fake that. A moment later, Captain Tryla Scott enters. She's been scorpioned as well. They all sit down at the table. Admiral Savar tells Picard that they, the space scorpions, come from somewhere far away, and they've been moving slowly, infiltrating Starfleet bit by bit so that no one would notice. And now it's too late. Riker's like, yeah, too late for you, loser. Fuck you. I hate you. That's the Scorpion talking. Admiral Savar says, hey, Riker, eat your mealworms while they're still wriggling. Riker's like, don't mind if I do, and he pinches himself a nice big clump of worms, and he's about to take a bite when he draws his phaser and shoots the nameless gold-shirted guy across the table. He stands up like, Commander Riker, eat worms? I don't think so. Not until next season. Together, Riker and Picard also manage to take out Captain Scott and Admiral Savar. When Scott hits the floor, the scorpion crawls out of her mouth. Picard's like, ew, gross, but no time for that. Admiral Aaron is getting away. Aaron runs out into the hallway, and Riker and Picard chase after him. They shoot Aaron in the back with their phasers, right in the kidneys, too. He's gonna feel that for days. Oh, never mind, I guess he's dead. The space scorpion crawls out of Aaron's mouth and skitters under a door. They follow it into that room and find, sitting at a rotating supervillain chair in front of a big video screen, Commander Remick. He says, hey, can I help you? The space scorpion crawls up his leg. Picard warns him, but Remick's like, what, this little guy? He's just my precious little guy. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And then Remick swallows the space scorpion. Oh, man, you really should have at least chewed it a little first. You can tell it doesn't go down easy because his neck gets inflamed right away. Remick stands up and says, you've got us all wrong. We mean you no harm. Secretly taking over Starfleet and killing everyone who threatened us, that was just our way of making friends. Can't we at least be civil with one another? Picard and Riker exchange looks, then blast away with their phasers. Remick falls back into the chair, his face melts and explodes, and his chest bursts open, and a big slimy space creature rises up like, so much for the tolerant left, and then Riker and Picard kill that too. We cut back to the Enterprise a little later, where Picard, through a captain's log, informs us that everything is fine now, since he and Riker killed the mother space scorpion, which is apparently what that thing in Remick's chest was. All the other little space scorpions have died. Admiral Quinn is awake and back to his old self again. Don't you love it when you kill the head bad guy and all the other bad guys instantly die? And the complicated and out-of-control problem is suddenly just solved? That's the best. Except, Data comes to the bridge and informs Picard that before he died, Remick sent a message to an unexplored sector of the galaxy. It was a homing beacon, so that whoever receives the message can find Earth. Picard's like, shit, we're sure gonna be in big trouble whenever that tease gets paid off. The end! Conspiracy is one of the more interesting episodes from TNG's mostly terrible first season. It's the second to last episode of the season, and by that point, the quality of the series had started to improve, albeit very slightly. It's also the conclusion of TNG's first tentative experimentation with multi-episode storytelling. The seeds of the secret space scorpion infiltration were planted several episodes earlier in Coming of Age, which is where we first meet Admiral Quinn and Commander Remick, and where Quinn warns Picard about his suspicions of a looming threat growing within Starfleet. The writers of Deep Space Nine would eventually master this form of storytelling, introducing details in one episode, then returning to them several episodes later. But TNG rarely attempted this sort of thing, even in its prime. The execution here could be better, and I'll get into details about that in a second, but just seeing them make the attempt at a multi-episode arc on a show as rigidly episodic as TNG is kind of thrilling. The major flaw of the episode is that it packs too much in. A lot happens, a lot of really important, potentially game-changing stuff, and then by the end of the episode it's all wrapped up so the heroes can move on to the next thing. Because that earlier episode, Coming of Age, only introduced the basic idea that something nefarious was going on within Starfleet, Conspiracy has to show us Captain Picard discovering this infiltration for himself, coming to accept that it's real, and then going to confront those responsible and ultimately resolving the situation. That's a lot of story. It would take Andor like 10 seasons to get through all of that. Hell, just that scene where Picard, Data, and Riker are deciding whether or not to take the Enterprise back to Earth would be stretched out across 4 episodes. On a more reasonably paced series, maybe the story being told by Conspiracy could have benefited from one more episode. I'm not saying make it a 2-parter, just maybe have the stuff from the first part of the episode where Picard is contacted by Captain Keel and they have their secret meeting take place during an episode where the main story is about something else, and then have the explosion that blows up Captain Keel's ship be the opening of the episode where Picard finally accepts that the conspiracy is real and returns to Earth to confront it. I don't know. Imaginary rewrites of episodes, especially long after the fact, should always be taken with a grain of salt, but I do think giving some of the beats packed into this one episode a little bit more room to breathe probably wouldn't have hurt. Because Conspiracy has to accomplish so much in such a relatively small amount of time, its writer, Tracy Torme, working from an original story by Robert Sabaroff, divides the episode into 2 fairly distinct sections. There's the build-up, where Picard is concerned about this possible conspiracy, but still not quite buying into it, and the payoff, where Picard is now all in and taking the Enterprise back to Earth to do something about it. As is often the case, the build-up is better than the payoff. For roughly the first half of its runtime, Conspiracy is pretty good. It convincingly layers in the suspense and doubt regarding the strange activities of Starfleet Command and the suspicions by Captain Keel and the others on Ditalix B that people are somehow being replaced by imposters. The secret meeting on Ditalix B is a nicely crafted bit of paranoia theater. Picard finding himself unarmed and surrounded by people who should be his allies, but who treat him like a potential enemy until they're satisfied that he's on their side. The red-tinted lighting and rough industrial set design add to the effect. Keel and the others have called Picard to this barren, abandoned location because nowhere else is safe. And, as Picard realizes much too late, this location wasn't safe either. We see how Picard wants to take the possibility seriously. He trusts his old friend Walker Keel, but also recognizes how outlandish the accusations are and how little evidence there is to substantiate them. It's a reasonable reaction, and it's the way you'd hope someone in Picard's position would respond to what Keel and the others tell him. Don't ignore the potential threat, but try to verify that the threat actually exists before taking any decisive action. Picard doesn't keep this all to himself either. He tells Counselor Troi about it right away, which makes sense. Why wouldn't he tell her about it? Advising the captain is a big part of why she's on the ship. He also brings Riker and Data into it eventually as well. Again, he acts like a sensible person trying to respond to an unbelievable situation in a rational way. And when the Horatio is destroyed and Keel is killed, that not only convinces Picard that the conspiracy is real, it also gives him a personal stake. Now, it's more than an institution being compromised. Now, Picard has lost a friend. Stories about people being replaced by evil duplicates are common in sci-fi and horror. The first connection I make when I watch this episode, and probably the first one most of you do as well, is to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Star Trek returns to this concept again and again throughout the run of the franchise in numerous variations, and it's easy to see why. The idea taps into one of our most deeply held fears, that we don't actually know the people around us, that the ones we trust the most, or the ones with power over us, could turn out to be someone other than we think they are, could even be out to hurt us. That's a scary concept, and while it's in that build-up phase of the story, Conspiracy makes very effective use of that concept. But when it comes time for the payoff, things start to fall apart. The well-crafted plot and believable characterization gives way to cliches and narrative shortcuts and some outright goofiness. The episode doesn't truly go off the rails until Admiral Quinn arrives for his visit to the Enterprise. The idea here is that he's skipping the dinner with Picard and the other admirals so he can go to the ship and eventually introduce Dr. Crusher to the space scorpion he's brought along in his travel case. Riker walks in on Quinn taking a peek at the scorpion in his quarters, and for some reason, instead of lying to Riker about what's in the case and changing the subject, Quinn decides to change the plan, reveal himself to Riker, beat Riker up and knock him out, and then, while he's alone with an unconscious Riker, before Worf and Geordi show up, not infect Riker with the space scorpion in the case. Obviously, we're meant to question whether or not Riker's been infected. That's why that quick shot of Riker suddenly waking up and coming up behind Dr. Crusher is there, to make us wonder if Riker is about to jam one of those space scorpions down Beverly's throat or up her ass or however they get in. We don't know at this point, do we? It's open to speculation. But the circumstances as we see them don't make any sense. If Quinn doesn't infect Riker because he really is saving that space scorpion for Crusher, why does he go out of his way to fuck up his own plan a second time when Geordi and Worf arrive? He tries to leave the room without the space scorpion he brought along, and when Geordi puts up the smallest amount of resistance, Quinn goes into attack mode again, tossing Geordi through the door and beating up Worf. Crusher shows up, incapacitates Quinn with her phaser, they take him to sickbay, and Crusher discovers the space scorpion controlling his brain. None of that would have happened if Quinn had just kept his cool. The space scorpion plot was succeeding. Sure, Picard and Riker and Data had their suspicions, and Picard had also shared his concerns with Troy, but no one else on the Enterprise knew about any of this. The Scorpions had already taken control of Starfleet Command and numerous other high-ranking officers throughout the organization. They're a few steps away from the finish line. And this hot-headed asshole controlling Admiral Quinn blows the whole thing. It sure is lucky for our heroes that Quinn decided to start multiple fights on the Enterprise for no reason, or else they might not have been able to defeat this civilization-threatening enemy. It's just a sloppy shortcut so the protagonists can find out the information they need in order to resolve the situation in the allotted screen time. It's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. Ward Costello, who plays Admiral Quinn, seems like he's having a blast, sneering, making threats, insisting that it's just the vitamins he's been taking that are making him so strong. But despite how entertaining it is, I wouldn't call it good writing. There is a small attempt to justify this at the dinner scene when Admiral Savar reveals that the Scorpion conspirators wanted Picard to find them out so he would come to them. And Captain Scott says that humans and the space scorpions share a love of theater, and they appreciate Picard putting on a show. So Quinn ruins their interstellar domination plan because, in addition to being patient and calculating, the Space Scorpions are also messy drama queens? Another shortcut that doesn't work is the telltale sign of the presence of the Space Scorpions, that little blue tail that sticks out of the host's neck. These creatures have supposedly infiltrated all levels of Starfleet. Who knows how many of them have been placed in hosts at various facilities and on starships all across the galaxy. And nobody has ever noticed the fucking blue tails sticking out of the backs of people's necks before? Christ, the Space Scorpions could at least try to choose hosts with long hair or something. It's a clear visual indicator, which I like in theory, and it enables Riker's little masquerade when he arrives at dinner. But if you think about it for 2 seconds, it doesn't make any sense. And, of course, there's the laziest shortcut of all, but also the most inevitable one, having the death of the mother scorpion in Remick lead to the instant deaths of all the other scorpions, thus totally solving the problem. 1 second, you've got a conspiracy infiltrating Starfleet. The next, everything's fine. Good thing the villains have this extremely convenient weakness, huh? Like I said before, this is TNG dipping its toe into multi-episode storytelling, not launching a long-term ongoing story for the entire series. The producers didn't want the Space Scorpion infiltration to become what the show was about, so they needed to wrap it up quickly. I get that. I'm sympathetic to that. But if that's what they wanted to do, they had other options besides the old cut off the head of the snake cliche. Maybe, instead of establishing that Space Scorpions had taken control of a whole bunch of people throughout Starfleet, make it so that there are only a few of them, and they've taken control of these senior Starfleet officers so they can pull the strings. That way it's plausible that Picard and Riker could have killed them all, but there's also the possibility that somewhere out there, 1 or 2 of the Space Scorpions still live, and you don't know who they might be, until you start checking necks, anyway. So yeah, it's not a terrible episode. It moves along at a nice clip, out of necessity, and it's never boring, I'll give it that. There's a fun little character beat in there with Data talking to himself while doing his research on the computer, then realizing that he's talking to himself, then trying to explain to the computer what talking to yourself means and getting told to shut up by the computer. I like that bit. It's the sort of thing they wouldn't be able to do with Data later on in the series, but here in season 1, with the writers and Brent Spiner still dialing in the character, it works just fine. The first half is well done, but in the second half, it goes from a good episode to an enjoyably goofy episode with a memorably gross finale. Shout out to all the 80s kids who watched this one on a Saturday afternoon, saw the gruesome depths of Remick and the mother Space Scorpion, and either lost their lunch or became devoted lifelong fans of the show, depending on their particular sensitivities. You can probably guess which one I was. Those are my thoughts on Conspiracy. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as this Starfleet Gone Bad batch of reviews continues with a look at another episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Wounded. That's a fun one. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.